On this Saturday night, a ceasefire looms. Anxious families in both Gaza and Israel await the return of their loved ones and a possible end to the 15-month war. The fragile deal only hours away, but will it hold? The list of contenders for the Liberal leadership grows.
We need to rebuild our party.
I'm in this to fight for you.
But can any of them slow the momentum of Pierre Poilievre? A possible TikTok lifeline. The signals from the U.S. president-elect that help is coming just hours before shutting down. And robotics as sport?
We want the same resources, the same advantages as athletes get here in Canada.
The fight from these Quebec high school students for recognition of their field.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Carolyn Jarvis.
Until the last hostage is home. That is the message being sent to the Israeli government and to Hamas tonight from the streets of Tel Aviv. This rally happening on the eve of a ceasefire deal, which is expected to see a staggered release of hostages. 33 Israelis are set to be part of the first exchange for roughly 1,900 Palestinian prisoners and detainees. Good evening and thanks for joining us. The anticipation is not just building in Israel, but also in Gaza, which has been pummeled by Israeli airstrikes for 15 months. If it happens, the hostage for prisoner exchange could be the first step in ending the conflict. Our Jeff Semple is on the ground in Tel Aviv tonight. Jeff.
Well, Carolyn, every Saturday for the past 15 months now, Israelis have gathered here in what's now known as Hostages Square, calling for those Israelis held by Hamas to come home. Well, just hours from now, that call may be answered. Israel believes around 60 Hamas hostages are still alive in Gaza, including the youngest. Kafir Bibas was less than 9 months old when he was taken hostage, along with his 4-year-old brother and parents. Saturday marked Kafir's second birthday. Today I tried to write a birthday message for Kafir, his aunt said. A message for a child who can't celebrate, a child trapped in hell. But no words come out, only tears. Kafir was last seen holding his favorite toy elephant, and in solidarity, people at the rally brought their own, including this Israeli-Canadian father of 2 young children.
It's so difficult not to just imagine, God forbid, what that would be like.
Hamas claimed months ago, without evidence, that the Bibas family had been killed by an Israeli strike, but their names are now reportedly on the list of those set to be released as part of a ceasefire deal.
Just the idea of possibly seeing them come home is something that is incredible. The words are hard to describe.
Israel intensified its bombing of Gaza on Saturday. But at 8:30 a.m. local time on Sunday, those relentless airstrikes will fall silent, and Israeli forces will pull back, allowing Gaza's 2 million residents to return to what's left of their homes, including Zahi Farhan and his family, sheltering in a cemetery. He lost his home and his leg in an airstrike 1 year ago. This extermination must stop, he says. He hasn't received a prosthetic, with hospitals overwhelmed and borders closed. But help is coming. Trucks carrying tens of thousands of tons of aid are now lined up at the Gaza border, waiting for the ceasefire to open the gates. And as Gazans wait for aid, Israelis prepare for a homecoming. Over the next 6 weeks, 33 Israeli hostages are expected to be released. Hospitals now preparing, unsure what to expect. In exchange, Israel has pledged to free hundreds of Palestinian prisoners, including children, political prisoners, and others convicted of murder and terrorism, such as militant leader Zakaria Zubeidi, once considered one of Israel's most wanted. In a late-night address, the Israeli Prime Minister said his country reserves the right to return to fighting if needed with the backing of the United States, and he vowed to bring all the hostages home. Those prisoners and hostages will be released in smaller groups over the next 42 days, assuming, of course, this ceasefire holds. The last ceasefire was back in November 2023, and it fell apart after 1 week. Carolyn?
Jeff Semple in Tel Aviv tonight. Thank you. Turning to Canada now, and a third well-known Liberal is throwing her hat in the ring to become the next party leader and Prime Minister.
It's time for a new generation of leadership that understands you and is focused on you.
Government House Leader Karina Gould unveiled her leadership campaign on social media today. At 37, she's the youngest candidate to declare just days before the deadline to enter the race. Gould has been an MP since 2015 and is the only current cabinet minister to announce a leadership bid. Also today, former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland posted her first campaign ad since joining the race. Freeland is billing herself as the best person to fight Donald Trump.
I left Trudeau's cabinet because I know what we need to do to win that fight again.
In the ad, Freeland claims Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre would sell Canada out to Trump. She's expected to formally launch her campaign in Toronto tomorrow, 3 days after Mark Carney began his bid in Edmonton. Early polls suggest the former Bank of Canada governor holds a modest lead in the race, which could be helped by his latest endorsement.
I will be officially endorsing you, Mark, in the leadership for the Liberal Party.
I can't wait to work together.
Look forward to it.
Emergency Preparedness Minister Harjit Sajjan says Carney's experience and expertise are why he's endorsing Carney's campaign. In the U.S., preparations are well underway for President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration on Monday. The ceremony will look different as it's been moved indoors for the first time since 1985. But as VIPs and supporters descend on Washington, D.C., many around the world are looking ahead to what's expected from Trump's first week as president in his second term. Bianca Fascini reports.
Preparations for the inauguration are moving indoors as Washington, D.C. braces for a frigid cold front come Monday. The president-elect says he made the decision to protect attendees from the weather, but his supporters are still disappointed.
I would stand in the 5-degree weather in order to support what he's going to do.
The ceremony will take place inside the Capitol Rotunda instead, which serves as the backup location for every inauguration. But space is limited for VIPs.
I was really excited for my kids to witness it.
As the Capitol makes final arrangements, people gathered in other parts of the city too.
There's a whole bunch of very worrisome things with the Trump administration.
The People's March, branded the Women's March back in 2017, kicked off Saturday to protest the Trump presidency.
I don't think it's an understatement to say really everything is at stake.
Those in attendance are protesting Trump's stance on several issues.
I see that all the issues are interconnected.
That includes immigration, which the president-elect plans to act on immediately. Speaking on Fox News, incoming border czar Tom Homan says a big raid will take place across the country starting Tuesday.
ICE is finally going to go out and do their job. We're going to take the handcuffs off ICE and let them go arrest criminal aliens. That's what's going to happen.
Americans are not alone in preparing for potential immigration policy changes under a second Trump term. Other nations, like Canada, are bracing for up to a 25% tariff on all goods, justified by Trump as a way to deter illegal immigration and drug trafficking at the border. Bianca Fascini, Global News, Washington.
Canada is preparing for Trump's threat of tariffs in part by beefing up border security. That includes obtaining Black Hawk military helicopters to be used by the RCMP for monitoring the U.S. border. Our Mercedes Stevenson got an exclusive close-up look at the new aircraft, and she joins us now from Ottawa. Mercedes.
Carolyn, the RCMP's new Black Hawk helicopters send a clear message to anybody thinking about crossing the border illegally. They're fast, agile, and carry elite tactical teams, ready to intervene in high-risk situations like human trafficking or drug cartel operations. The Black Hawks will be used to keep an eye on the border as well, looking after vast stretches that the RCMP once struggled to get to fast enough to stop illegal migration, guns, and drugs. The West Bloc obtained exclusive access this week and filmed as one of those helicopters came online for the very first time in Ottawa. Freshly outfitted and branded for the RCMP, the Black Hawks are being leased from an Ottawa company that already owned them and is providing the pilots to fly them too, allowing the RCMP to move at lightning speed in procuring the iconic helicopters used by militaries around the world, obtaining them in just a matter of weeks. This Sunday, we go behind the scenes to see the big black machines and get extremely rare require access to the elite counterterrorism operators who are on board. RCMP emergency response team officers, experts in dealing with threats from firearms, terrorists, and cartels. I'll check out the Black Hawk with Staff Sergeant Rob Tan, who leads the Central Region Emergency Response Team. He is one of the most experienced and respected tactical operators in Canada. Here is what Staff Sergeant Tan told me about what his team will be doing tomorrow on the border.
We'll be doing surveillance, detecting anything in coordination with our assets on the ground, and just border integrity enforcement, and take any actions that need to be taken for the enforcement on that responsibility.
So if you needed to, you guys are sort of this high-level capability that's capable of responding, arresting, putting people back on the helicopter.
That's correct. In a lot of the austere environments and the places we can't reach conventionally, we'll be able to observe them. We'll be able to deploy into those areas, conduct enforcement action as required, and be able to extract and remove from those locations as well, which we didn't have that capacity before.
And you can learn more about the RCMP's operations tomorrow morning on the West Block, right here on Global. A deep freeze is starting to sink in on both sides of the border, bringing with it heavy snow and fierce winds. In Saskatoon, ski hills are closed this weekend because of plummeting temperatures. Extreme cold warnings are in effect across large swaths of Canada. Frigid Siberian air could make it feel like minus 40 in parts of the prairies, Ontario, and Quebec. Nunavut could feel closer to minus 55. The bitter cold will continue moving southeast through Sunday. Dozens of skiers and snowboarders have been injured in a chairlift accident in northern Spain. The incident happened at a popular ski resort in the Pyrenees. Witnesses say people were trapped or went flying when the chairlift collapsed, sending seats crashing to the ground. A pulley at one end of the lift reportedly broke or became loose, causing the cable to lose tension.
¿Estás bien? Tranquila, tranquila, que te cogen.
Some skiers managed to jump off while others climbed down when rescuers arrived with ladders. About 30 people were injured. 10 are being treated in hospital. The U.S. ban on TikTok was to begin tomorrow, but that may be delayed. Coming up, how President-elect Donald Trump may intervene with the social media app. TikTok, one of the world's most popular social media apps, got a lifeline today. It was to be shut down in the U.S. on Sunday, but President-elect Donald Trump says he will most likely give the app a 90-day buffer after his inauguration. More than 170 million people use TikTok in the U.S. and 12 million in Canada. So if TikTok does go dark in the U.S., what does it mean for users here? Taria Isri reports.
Everybody's so creative.
It may not be goodbye after all for TikTok in the U.S., at least not yet.
The TikTok ban has been a fascinating political football.
Donald Trump told NBC's Meet the Press that when he returns to the White House, he's willing to delay the deadline for the company to find a new non-Chinese owner. The 90-day extension is something that will be most likely done because it's appropriate. We have to look at it carefully.
For all of those that want to save TikTok in America, vote for Trump.
While Trump campaigned to rescue the app, he had called for a ban back in 2020. The U.S. government barred the platform over national security concerns related to its alleged ties to the Chinese Communist Party and gave it until Sunday to find a new buyer. The Biden administration said it would not enforce the law and punted responsibility to Trump. TikTok had threatened to go offline itself.
Congratulations.
Shutting down the accounts of 170 million U.S. users.
It's literally my sole income, so it's essentially getting fired from your career.
The White House calls the shutdown threat a stunt. We see no reason for TikTok to act before the Trump administration takes office Monday. But users are already heading to its Chinese rival app, RedNote, driving it to the top of download charts in the U.S. and Canada.
There will always be another app that people go to. Oh my God! I think a lot of literacy around social media needs to be taught more so than fear around it.
Canada hasn't banned TikTok, but has ordered the company to close its Canadian offices.
For Canada, our number one concern shouldn't just be TikTok. It should be the American social media oligarchs who are increasingly flexing their muscles.
I want to thank President Trump.
The head of TikTok is expected to attend Trump's inauguration, along with Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk, the three richest men in America. Taria Isri, Global News, Montreal.
After his inauguration on Monday, Trump says he plans to visit California toward the end of the week. Trump has sharply criticized California's response to the wildfires that have killed at least 27 people and destroyed more than 10,000 buildings in Los Angeles. Among the many devastating stories, Tennis Hall of Famer Pam Shriver had her tennis trophies stolen while fleeing from the Palisades fire. She says thieves stole her car with her 5 U.S. Open trophies, 5 French Open plates, and 1 Australian Open trophy in the back seat. Ahead, as temperatures and emissions keep rising, what's the outlook for Canada's climate rules now that Justin Trudeau is on the way out? Climate policy was a key focus for Justin Trudeau's government, but the Liberals' deeply unpopular carbon tax has seemingly become political poison in the search for his replacement. Even longtime ally Chrystia Freeland is now backing away. Heather Yourex-West looks at where that leaves the push to reduce emissions in the years ahead.
For the Canadian oil sands, 2024 was a banner year. Month after month, the Alberta industry broke production records. And with a new pipeline to the West Coast, TMX, in operation, that production is projected to climb. Alberta's premier would like to see it soar.
I'm looking forward to the next Prime Minister being somebody who will support our aspirations to double our oil and gas production, remove the carbon tax, make sure that we do not have an emissions cap on production, which we know is a production cap.
Leading in the polls, Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives have promised to kill the consumer carbon tax and clear the way for the industry to grow.
The era of liberal tax increases and anti-development policies that have driven $500 billion of our money south of the border is over.
Donald Trump's tariffs and potential retaliatory measures on energy exports by Ottawa could slow production. With an affordability crisis adding job loss fears and a threat of recession, climate policy becomes a pretty tough sell. After defending the carbon tax for years, Liberal leadership candidate Chrystia Freeland now says she would replace the system. Mark Carney says his climate policy plan will be rolled out in the weeks to come.
I've said for a long time that if you were going to take out the carbon tax, you should replace it with something that is at least, if not more, effective.
The industry has this mixed feeling because they've invested a great deal of time and money trying to reduce carbon emissions. And if the carbon tax comes off, then it really says a lot of those investments were wasted.
Like the work done so far by oil sands consortium, the Pathways Alliance, to get the industry to net zero with carbon capture and storage. Martha Hall-Finley, who worked on the project when she was a VP at Suncor, hopes the $16 billion project will have the next government's support.
Let's be clear, this was because there's a global challenge of emissions. There's a global challenge of customers and investors for the industry who are also concerned about that.
Because beyond oil production levels, 2024 shattered a global temperature record as well. Proof the climate crisis should not be ignored. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
Next, is it science or sport? The field of competitive robotics and its fight for recognition. A group of high school students in Montreal is petitioning the Quebec government to recognize robotics as a sport. While it may not have the hallmarks of other athletic disciplines, they argue it's just as competitive. As Phil Carpenter reports, the designation is already happening in parts of the U.S., and now the students want the same boost for their craft here.
Perfect.
It takes more brain power than physical strength to machine small pieces of metal to just the right dimensions. But teens at the Regina Assumpta College insist that what they do in the field of science deserves to be on the same playing field as athletes.
Basically, we want the same resources, the same advantages as athletes get here in Canada.
They build robots and compete with other students across the globe in robot games. There are 2 teams at this school. More than 500 students are involved in the field.
But we only get 5 classes in a month, which is not enough.
They believe in order to encourage more students across the province to become more interested in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, robotics should be recognized as a sport.
Robotics is as important as sport in our society. For example, here in Quebec, Canada, we have a shortage of workforce in the STEM field.
And these students fear that young people in this province are losing interest.
When the pandemic hit, and even before that, there was this decline of the robotics community.
One reason for the drop in interest, they argue, difficulty in interacting with teams outside Quebec.
And that also means that sometimes communication with other teams is a bit difficult. Some documentation, we're trying to do programming, all the code is written in English.
The students also point to another problem, the perception that kids who study robotics have no other interest. Not so, they argue.
There's a lot of people that are athletes. They play soccer, they play basketball, they go to the gym as well.
They point to jurisdictions like Texas and Minnesota where robotics is a varsity sport and believe it's in this province's interest to do something similar.
Forming the next generation of workforce, of engineers, of mathematicians for the Quebec society.
As they prepare for an international competition in Houston in April that they liken to the Super Bowl.
With the thousands of people in the ring, I think that's the feeling we get over there.
Here at home, they've launched a petition to get the provincial government to grant them their wish. Phil Carpenter, Global News, Montreal.
And that is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Carolyn Jarvis. Tonight's Your Canada is this bison in Elk Island National Park, Alberta. We love seeing your Canada. Please keep emailing your photos to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll join us again tomorrow. Have a great night.